And some of their reasons were that it was riddled with exclusions and technicalities, and pet insurance is one of the country's worst value insurance products. And then another thing that they said was that it relies on emotional manipulating your love of your pet to sell you worthless insurance. So which is it? Is pet insurance an absolute lifesaver and a necessity for anybody who can afford it, or even those who actually can't afford good pet care? Or is it a complete waste of money and you're better off putting your funds towards something much more valuable? Well, that's what I'm discussing in today's question.
Welcome to Call the Vet, the show that answers all your dog and cat questions so they can live healthier, happier lives. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the 43rd episode of the Call the Vet podcast. I'm really happy that you're here with me, spending your valuable time with me. And if we've not met before, my name's Dr. Alex. I'm the veterinarian behind ourpetshealth.com, and on this show I answer any questions that you have about how to keep your pet healthy, how to treat them to the best of your ability, or anything else dog and cat related. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button on whichever podcasting app you're listening to. And I also, just before I get into today's question, wanted to read you this quick review, which was from a fighter's parents in Ireland. So don't you love the Apple podcast names that we have for ourselves? So they left me this review that says, "Love it. The episode about spaying your female dog was super helpful, and I really like all the topics. I love animals, and if you do too, you'll love it." So thanks so much for that kind review. I love hearing your feedback, good or bad. So if you've got any ideas for the podcast, or if you just really enjoy what you hear on a weekly basis, if you head over to Apple Podcasts or whichever app you're listening to and leave me an honest, preferably 5-star review, I'd appreciate it so much. It helps more than you can imagine with other people discovering this podcast, with surfacing it in search and letting people know that it's something that really is worth their time. And ultimately that will allow me to help more people and more pets, which is what I'm absolutely passionate about. But anyway, that's it from me for the moment. Let's get into today's question. And today's question was sent in by Sean Wakefield, who simply wrote, "What is your take on pet insurance?" So this is a really timely question, as just a few weeks ago in Australia, the pet insurance industry was awarded a Shonky Award. Now, this isn't something that you want to be winning, because it was awarded for being one of the dodgiest products in the country. And after reviewing 86 different pet insurance policies, Choice, who are a consumer watchdog group who award these Shonky Awards, claimed that it couldn't recommend a single pet insurance policy, and that's out of 86 different ones. And some of their reasons were that it was riddled with exclusions and technicalities, and pet insurance is one of the country's worst value insurance products. And then another thing that they said was that it relies on emotional manipulating your love of your pet to sell you worthless insurance. So that really doesn't sound like something that you want to be investing in or considering for your pet. We'll argue whether that really is the case or not in just a minute. But there's definitely some things that they do flag and that I do say all the time to people when they ask me about this in the consult room. And I've also done several other pieces about insurance and choosing the best insurance and how to go about that, as well as some alternatives that I'll cover today, but also I'll leave links in the show notes for you to have a little bit of a deeper dive into this if it's something that you are really still interested in after today's episode. But insurance, it definitely doesn't cover absolutely everything your dog or your cat might need for their complete healthcare. So really, it covers routine. It doesn't cover any routine care. So insurance is for our sickness and our injuries, our unexpected life events, not for our routine care. So it doesn't cover vaccinations and parasite control, for example. It often excludes dentistry, so it won't cover any form of dentistry. Now, there are kind of exceptions to that. Some policies will cover dentistry as long as you act as soon as your vet recommends that your pet has some dental treatment. If there's a delay, then it might be that they don't cover that. And it will often cover accidental dental trauma. So if, for example, you're playing football with your dog, kick them in the head, and they need to have a tooth removed because of that, and unfortunately that does happen. Accidents do happen. Then often insurance will cover that, but it's definitely something to think about, because some will exclude anything to do with teeth. Full stop. There are also exclusions based on breed. So if you've got a breed that's got a high risk of a particular condition, it might be that actually isn't covered. So that's the most likely thing you're going to need insurance for, if you like, or it's the most likely procedure that's going to be required by your pet, but that might be excluded by the insurance policy, and you might not realise that until it comes to actually paying for that procedure. And there are also exclusions based on history. Now that won't go as won't be any surprise to those of you with your own health insurance. So the difficulty here is that if your dog or your cat has had any problems in the past related to that particular area or part of the body or organ, then even if they haven't had any issues for years and years, and there's no link to that previous problem, it's likely that there will be an exclusion in place. So an example of this will be if your dog has been lame in their back leg, maybe when they were a 2-year-old, you decide, I'm actually interested in getting insurance now, and you get it when they were 2.5, 3. So after they've had that injury, if they then go on to rupture their cruciate ligament as a 10-year-old dog, that's got nothing to do with that original injury, but the chances is that any lameness or any condition in that leg that had that initiating lameness will be excluded. So, that's something that's really important to consider. And I guess it's one of the reasons why, if you're going to get insurance, actually getting it while your pet is young, even as a puppy or a kitten, is going to be the best thing to do, because there won't be any worry about any exclusions based on any of their history. Now, other things we need to be aware of is that premiums will go up as a dog or a cat gets older. So the insurance premiums will gradually creep up, and they can get to a stage where they really are very, very expensive. And actually, sometimes the monthly premium is more than you'd be paying for some of these long-term medications. A big dog with arthritis, for example, those medications can add up to quite a lot, but it might even be that the insurance premium is even higher than that, in which case it clearly isn't worthwhile unless your pet also gets injured, needs a surgery, or has a serious injury. So that's definitely something to consider. And some companies just simply won't cover geriatric pets, so you'll have been insured with them for their whole life, but then they get to a certain age, that could be 10, 12, whatever it is. Different insurance policies differ, and your insurance company just drops them, and so you're left with an older dog, an older cat who's more likely to need certain investigations or certain care. They're more likely to become unwell, and their insurance company, the insurance company won't be covering them, and no other insurance company will take them on at that age either. So, that's something to think about as well. And it's a real frustration that I hear from people, that the premiums have just got so ridiculously expensive, it's not worth it, or they just simply cannot get insured anymore. So, this all ties in with the fact that I often tell people, and if you think about it, it's completely true, that an insurance company's job is to not pay out so that they can make money for their stakeholders. And that on average, a pet owner will pay more in insurance than they will ever claim back. If an insurance company is routinely paying out more money than that policy is costing, then they're going to be losing money, and they're not going to have a viable business. So we can't criticize any business for wanting to make money. And it's just simply, facts that on average, a pet owner will pay more in insurance than they'll ever claim back. But, and here is the big but. So from everything that I've spoken about, you'll think, well, absolutely, insurance is rubbish. There's no need to get it. But insurance can definitely be the difference between life and death. So we get serious illnesses which need expensive diagnostics, needs expensive different treatments, that hospitalization for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks with intensive nursing, intensive care can be incredibly expensive. It might be that a complicated surgery is needed because, they've broken their leg really badly, or they've got an intestinal obstruction, or, whatever it is. These things, they add up to an awful lot of money. And unfortunately, very often, these really serious conditions, these serious injuries will be unaffordable without insurance. And so the alternative, really, if we don't have insurance and you can't afford to pay, and to be honest, if you can't afford to pay these things, you'll fit in with the vast majority of pet owners out there. The alternatives, there are several alternatives, but they're going to be either less than ideal care. Corners will be cut to try and fit in with your budget. And if corners are cut, we can't expect to have such a good prognosis or the ideal outcome. It might be that a diagnosis can't actually be made and we have to treat your pet with the presumption that they've got a certain condition, but that might be wrong. It might even be that you're left with a decision to euthanize your pet, or that they die because they're not able to get the ideal treatment that they need. And that's clearly a tragic situation to be put in. It's something that we're often racked with guilt about. We feel, guilty that we're not able to provide the care that they need. And insurance actually takes away the financial aspect of any decision. So when your pet becomes ill, if they're injured, it's a stressful time anyway. And if you're left with that financial guilt as well, then it makes it, multiple times worse. So that's where insurance comes in. It helps to just remove the financial impact or the financial component of any decision that needs to be made, which can be a real comfort. And then, if unfortunately, and as is the case with serious injuries or serious illnesses, the outcome isn't successful, at least you're not left thinking, well, if only I could have afforded, X, Y, or Z, the outcome would have been different. So that's really where insurance comes in. And I do, despite all of the drawbacks to it, I do think it can be a very valuable thing to have, and it's definitely something that every pet owner should consider, even if they then decide it's not something for them and their family. Now, there are alternatives to insurance. Now, one of those is going to be to have an emergency savings fund, and I definitely encourage anybody who doesn't have pet insurance to start an emergency savings fund specifically for their pet's treatment. So what we do here is, you can start off with a little bit of a lump sum if you do have some savings to put into the account. If you don't, that's fine. But then you drip feed every week, every fortnight, every month, however frequently you get paid is probably going to be the best thing. You drip feed a small amount of money into that account to build up a bit of a buffer, a bit of a savings fund should your pet need, any treatment. Now, how much this needs to be, or how much ideally this savings fund should be built up to, really is going to depend on your pet, on their breed, on their size, on their species, so cat or dog, and also on the area that where you live in the world, because that's going to the costs of veterinary care are going to vary, within a country, within a state, as well as obviously between countries as well. So talk to your vet about how much this should be for your pet. Is that going to be between $5,000 and $10,000? Is probably a fairly sensible a figure to start with. But yeah, talk to your vet. They'll give you a bit of a guideline there for what you should be trying to save for. Now, one of the drawbacks with an emergency saving fund is that if you're only starting a saving fund with regular payments, there's no lump sum to kind of start it off with, then what are the options if the fund is not enough? So if you just start this savings fund when you get a new puppy or new kitten, it starts off at $0, £0, but they then get sick or they get injured after 6 months, well, that emergency fund hasn't going to have built up to very much, and chances are it's not really going to cover much of kind of their healthcare costs at all. So what are the alternatives? And that's one of the big drawbacks of an emergency saving fund compared to insurance, whereas once you get them insured, there's generally a 14-day kind of waiting period, so you can't make a claim on any condition that comes around within that 14 days. And the reason for that is to stop people kind of having a sick pet, getting insurance, and then taking them to the vet the next day. That's why there's that stand down period. But after that period, they are covered completely if they become unwell or injured. But there are other alternatives. So, there's credit cards, there's finance companies, there's different loan options. Now, they are clearly very expensive ways to access money. The interest rates are pretty high. Those of them that claim to be interest-free will often have an initial kind of setup fee, which can be fairly significant, and is basically, you should think of that as a way of just saying that there's no interest, but that's that's the interest on the product. But if you go over that time period to pay it off, or it's on your credit card, then typically the interest rates are pretty high, and that's a really expensive way to access money, especially if you're going to struggle to pay that back. In a reasonable amount of time. You could borrow from family. That would certainly be another option if your family are in a position to lend you money. But if you do have an emergency saving fund and you do choose to go down that option, you should definitely have a plan should things go wrong a little bit sooner than you would like, although clearly we don't want it to go wrong at all, just so that you can then pay for any care that's needed. So, that's really the bottom line. Insurance can definitely be a worthwhile product. It can give you peace of mind, and it can also save your pet's life. So that's not something to be scoffed at, despite all of the potential drawbacks and exclusions and intricacies. Like I say, if you do kind of, after all this, think pet insurance is something that you're interested in and you'd like to explore more, then, make sure you head over to the show notes, and there'll be a link there to a post I did, which gives you a lot of different considerations about how to choose the best insurance policy for you, and really there's no one size fits all recommendation. Every pet's different, every family situation is different, and it's important that you consider all of the questions that I put to you in that post when it comes to looking at the best insurance policy. Certainly don't choose just based on price alone, because if you do that, you'll probably get a pretty inferior product that won't cover everything you think that it might cover.
Get your questions answered at callthevet.org.
So that's pet insurance in a nutshell. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, it's certainly not the ideal product, but it definitely has its place. I'd love to hear your thoughts on pet insurance over in the show notes. If you could leave me a comment, or you could hit me up on Twitter at Our Pets Health is my handle there, and I'd love to hear from you. But of course, far better than relying on insurance or an emergency fund would be preventing the most common causes of injury and illness in the first place. And that's why I produced a free guide, which is the 5 steps to keeping your pet happy, healthy, and out of the vet clinic. It takes you through the most common causes of poor health, the most common issues that we see in the vet clinic, that I see every single day in my consult room. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, head over to ourpetshealth.com/petcareguide to download your free copy today. And really, that's it from me. Make sure you check out that guide. I'd love to hear your thoughts on pet insurance as well. And until next time, I'm Dr. Alex. This is Call the Vet. Take care.
You've been listening to Call the Vet. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the show that answers all of your pet questions.